Hey, what's up everybody? Rob here from Ram Studio Comics. Welcome back. So in today's video, we're going to talk about drawing the deltoid, the shoulder muscle, and talk about the three heads because I think when you simplify it like this, it makes it a lot easier for drawing your characters. The shoulder is one of the most mobile parts of the body as far as the ability to rotate and movement and all axis. It's just very agile and can make a lot of different movements. What happens there because of that and because of the shift to the anatomy, it's easy to get confused by it. So let's go ahead and jump on in. I first want to explain the three heads of the shoulder and how you might look at it. So what I'm going to do here is draw a basic front view. And so what we're going to get in place is the shoulder kind of looks like a teardrop for most shapes or whatever, even the separation, but definitely the whole thing together. It kind of looks like a heart as well, but if you go like this and you get this basic shape, you see how it kind of looks like a heart right there, but also each one of these look like a teardrop or an upside down teardrop. So just like that, we've got a relatively front view of the deltoid. So from this view, you're only going to see two of the three heads, and the clavicle goes up here, and it kind of, angles down. It actually has more of a compounding curve like this. It meets to the middle of the chest like that. And then you have the pectoral muscles, and keep in mind you also have this divot. There's a name for that, like there is on every single part of the body, and I can't remember them all, but there's a divot there, and you want to be aware of that because that can make your chest and arm illustrations look more confident. So then you're going to come down like this under the chest. The pectoral muscles wrap and they actually twist and insert under the deltoid right there. So just like that, we've got the trapezius up here, but we're going to try to stay focused on the deltoid. So just like that, we've got a bit of a deltoid illustration. Let me go ahead and label these real quick. So what you've got here is your front head right here, and that's your anterior. Okay, so anterior means closer to the front. And then you've got the medial head, which that's pretty easy to understand, right? Middle. So let's just take a different color here. This is our medial head, medial deltoid. And just like that, we've got our first kind of layout here. And again, you can get into all these other muscles, trapezius and the neck and all that. But we're just going to focus on this for now. So let's move that over. And let's do another perspective shot or another angle of it. Because it's really important that you draw it in multiple angles because, it's going to shift dramatically. So let's go ahead and take and draw it from where we're going to see more of the medial head. So if you're looking at the back and you've got the trapezius muscle that comes up, it's got this kind of weird compounding curve like this, something like that. It basically V's down to the center of the back. And then the deltoid wraps around that. And so we're going to draw it like the arm is raised. And this is a good way to show the medial head because and it's a good way to show how dramatically the shoulder changes because what happens is this medial head really pops up and looks a lot more dominant than the posterior and anterior head. So just like that. Now the other thing is this actually inserts. It actually inserts right in front of the brachialis muscle, which comes like this. You got the biceps brachii, triceps. So again, I'm not going to get too far into that. I really want to stay focused on the deltoid here. But it's kind of strange because what will happen is you'll look at all these different illustrations and you'll see different things. But what I want to make sure you pay attention to is if you're really trying to segment this area of your character, that you show that it points off in front of the brachialis muscle. But I think for most instances, you're not going to draw the characters that segmented where you see that. And there's a lot of styles where you'll see them just kind of round over the medial head like that. So it's not a must that you have to point it right there, but if you want to be specific, pay attention to where the muscles insert and overlap. And as you always hear me say when drawing muscles, you want to think of rope drawing. It's very important to flow in and out and around each one, not that they bunt edge to edge or muscle group to muscle group. So it's kind of a tricky thing to wrap your head around, but just think of ropes flowing in and around one another. So just like that, we've got our next really rough illustration. Now the other thing is, I think it's probably important to show this, at least the latimus dorsi or lat muscle comes up and around like this. And so it's, again, another thing to pay attention to for connection points, because we always struggle with connecting the shoulder, connecting the hip, and leg to the hip and things like that. And a lot of times you can get this to look a lot better by just paying attention to the way the next muscle group inserts or points to, and the kind of the negative spaces you get from that. But yeah, so we'll just again stick to the shoulder muscle. So here we've got the medial head, which we've already labeled over here as kind of a lime green. So there's our medial head right there. Okay, and then we've got our anterior head, which is going to be on the front. So from this side, it's going to be this top one, like that. And then we have our posterior head. Label this with like a blue. And there's that guy. So, and again, this is a simplified version, right? If you look at anatomy illustrations, you're going to see a lot more detail than what I'm giving you here. But what I'm trying to get you to hopefully pay attention to is the basic separation that you get and the shift in the shape or shapes that you get from the anatomy. And, with the lessons I teach, I always try to simplify things first, and then we'll draw a, comic illustration version, something like that. So what's another good representation of the shoulder? Another big problem area for all of us is the shoulder when it's raised, and the fact that the deltoid or shoulder muscle will actually be visible from both sides. So let's go ahead and illustrate that real quick. So if you were to raise the character's arm, you've got the shoulder here, the arm coming up, something like that. What happens is, this is real easy to get confused with the illustration, because the shoulder is evident in a couple ways. The anatomy itself gets kind of tricky, but what happens, the pectoral muscle starts to come in front of the shoulder. So this is actually the front head or anterior head of the deltoid, but it gets covered up quite dramatically. Then the bicep brachii comes up here, inserts down here. And you get this little strand here. What's this one? The coracobrachialis. I can never remember that one, but pectoral muscle down like this. This is where it gets tricky too. So my first instinct is to want to draw the tricep like this, okay? And a lot of times I probably will, and it is going to appear that way, but it actually, to be a little bit more specific, the latimus dorsi comes up like this. The teres major comes up like this, and then the tricep comes over here. But actually, even this is a bit confusing. It's the tricep, and then the deltoid is visible. So it's something like that. So you see there's a lot going on in this area, which again is why it's so easy to get confused by it. And then the tricep, you have the long head, and then you have the medial head that comes around like this. So again, a lot going on in here. I'm not going to get all the way into the back here. It just keeps on going, another muscle, but hopefully you see how I'm trying to overlap those, and I have them sweeping around one another to hopefully illustrate it a bit better for you. So let me label these, and then we're going to jump into actually drawing this in a more imaginative way, since that's what we focus on the channel here, obviously. And that's what I want to teach you, is more of a dynamic, expressive way to do this stuff. but it's good to pay attention to this. So these are the studies you might do. And then, obviously the trapezius comes back like this, and it really dips in when the shoulder raises up. Like, for instance, this is something I found myself doing a lot when I would draw my characters. Probably still do it. I draw the trapezius really popped up. But if you're trying to be a little bit more correct, when that shoulder raises, this actually dips down. So the trapezius pops up more if you rotate your shoulder forward, like you're flexing and trying to pop up your traps. So you can look at bodybuilders. They do obviously moves like that where they're trying to show off their trapezius muscles. They have to rotate their shoulders forward to make that happen. So when their shoulder goes up, that pops back. And again, that's another relationship thing that happens all through the body. When we contort, when we rotate one part of our body, the other part, would kind of compensate or go back the other way. And forgive me, there's more technical ways and proper ways to say it as far as the occurrence of that in the body. But so just like that, so now we've got the anterior, which is now way up high. Let's see, what do we use? Red there. So let's label that real quick, or color coded, I should say. So there's our anterior. And then this one back here is our posterior popping around. So hopefully now seeing them together, it'll make more sense. And this is pretty skewed. That's the proportions are weird, probably weird on all of them, but it's not really about that. It's about showing you a diagram of how this all kind of works. And so now that we kind of have a better understanding of it, let's go ahead and draw a representation of it. So let's say, well, let's just do this. Let's take the one where the arm's raised. I think this is probably the most important one to do because it's obviously pretty easy to draw a shoulder and go like this. Well, I'm going to just draw this muscle-bound shoulder, bicep. I'm going to put that muscle in the middle there. I want to show the separation of the heads. So I've got like the one head here, the middle head there. And that's a skewed version, but you can see it's not too hard to draw that. That's a pretty common pose. So let's go for the one that's a bit trickier. So we know we got the pectoral muscle that comes up, the deltoid which pops up like this, the trapezius back here, the bicep, and then here's where it gets a little tricky. We do that middle muscle right there. And again, for me, the natural urge is to start drawing the tricep. But after doing the study, I know that that's something I got to fight. And we're going to do the latimus like this. And what was it? The teres major. But right here, this is where, for my style, I'm not going to show that separation. We know it's there now, but we're going to omit that. So we're just going to draw it and think of it more like this is the lat, not show that divide. And then we know that from there, we're going to put the deltoid evident back here, and then the tricep. So just like that, bicep here. And even here, we know that we have that divide from the long head to the medial head for the tricep. But I will put this line here, and then I'll put this divide there. That's usually, or a little bit more of a hint to that. But I'm not going to show that extreme segmentation that we did for the other illustration. So just like that, I might show the collarbone here, but the pectoral is going to cover up this portion of the collarbone or clavicle. Just like that. And I probably will make the trapezius bigger, just something I tend to do. All my characters have huge trapezius muscles. All right, so just like that, I'm going to probably increase the size of the tricep here. All right, let's soft erase this back. But again, this is how I would stylize it. And actually, I feel like the upper portion of the arm is a bit small proportionately. So I might adjust that. And actually, the separation here from the trapezius, I usually get into here, and I'm just going to draw the the serratus, but I'm going to stylize those. So I do something like this. I might show a little bit of the divide here as it breaks into these, and then I'll bring that out with shading. So now I'm going to jump in here and do some more line weight. Again, I feel like these need to be larger. Now, obviously, with the areas like the deltoid and the pectoral muscles, you can get in here and do a lot more of the striations and separations and all that. Again, that's all just style choices. I mean, we obviously know it's there, and certain people that are very defined, you see some of that, and then others you don't see it at all. It's just so that you got a lot of wiggle room in there for that, whatever you want to see for your own style. But just like that, we've got a little bit more of a comic book-esque, imaginative version of it. So I'm purposely highlighting certain areas, I'm shading certain areas, and I can keep taking that as far as I want. I can do a simplified version and leave it like this, and I can start to just fill it in with color and shadow and things like that. So there's obviously a lot of styles like that where you just do the line work, or I can get in here and shade and render and kind of texture it all. So let's do this. Let's wrap this one up. Let's do two more that are more drawn and rendered fully in a comic style. So hopefully this gives you a nice transition from the basic studies to a line art representation, a little bit of stylization, and now I'll show you the fully fledged comic rendering style that I like to do. So let's move on. Okay, so now for this one, I'm going to quickly throw in the basic shapes that we've talked about, divide up the heads to the deltoid, and do the separations from things like the bicep, tricep. I'm also going to drop in a layer of gray wash, gray tone. This helps me find my shadows. Keep in mind that I quickly brush in that gray tone, but when I sculpt the shadows, I redraw over top of the shadows, and I edge work, or put a little bit of different edge work to it. So I am sculpting the shadows over top of that gray wash. Not a big deal. The main thing I feel like with shadows is you just want to really fight the urge to make them too spherical and too representation or traced of the underlying shape. You want to describe the shadows with a bit more compounding curves. And then obviously rendering, the tapered lines following the direction of the form, trying to really develop this further. But again, this is more style and just the way that I like to do my work. So, lots of variables, lots of ways that you could do all these aspects differently from what I'm showing you here, but I just want to give you an idea how I like to do it. All right, so for this next one, we'll try a different pose. So again, this is always important to try to mix it up, try to do lots of variation. Just so you know too, I actually took a picture of myself making this pose. Now obviously I'm not quite this defined, pretty close, but the thing is that you get used to looking at the pose and then elaborating, using what you've studied from different superhero artwork, designs, whatever you want to call it, different imaginative works of art, but utilizing your own pose so that you don't have to search and scour for just the right pose if you can't figure something out. The best reference you got is yourself. Yes, we're not all built with superhero physiques, but at the same time, you should be able to train yourself to look through it and implement different parts of it. Also with the shapes of shadows, notice too that I really got a bit of, inventive with the shadowing of the forearm. The forearm doesn't really look like that, okay? And I'm okay with that. Like, I want to not only stretch my imagination for proportions, I want to play around with the shapes of shadows. I want to play around with the way that I render, the way that I do the line work. All of these things culminate together and form your style and ultimately make you different than everybody else, doing the same type of art. So if it's comic art, there's obviously a lot of different styles out there. You have plenty of ways to implement your own signature into the work. You just have to think about each aspect. And breaking it down in this way generally will make your life a lot easier. It will make it where you can do complex poses and renderings. So that'll bring this video to a close. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. I'd love to know what you think in the comments section below, as well as what you'd like to see in the future. As always, keep drawing, keep having fun, and bye for now.